Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is episode 342. I'm delighted to be joined on the podcast today by Brendan Hoyer. Brendan, how are you?
Very well, mate. It's good to be on.
Thank you very much for coming on, mate. I'm excited for this one. I feel like we can cover some really exciting stuff. I think as well, I've not mentioned yet your role that you're in, but currently under 21's athletic development coach. Is that right at Wolves?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Perfect. Now, people might have picked up that that is not a Birmingham accent. So, so we will get into that now in terms of your background and your career. So, do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown on where you've been, the roles you've been in that have led up to your current role?
Yeah, mate. I guess I played football growing up, so I did spend a fair bit of time like injured. So that was a big sort of passion project of mine, kind of getting into the S&C side of things. My first exposure was actually coaching football, like to like under 9, 10, 11s. Then I was playing at the same time, and then I just really delved into that kind of like gym and S&C side of things. I got my personal trainer certifications, and I was training, like Barry, 45-year-old dad, Sally, 35-year-old mum of four. And then I sort of, made the call early on that like athletes is where I want to go, and work in football's always been sort of the end goal. Um, so managed to get my uni degree, and then everything just kind of like stemmed from there, really. So I initially started sort of working very voluntarily at the football club I was playing with. They sort of turned me the head of high performance, and I was working with the junior guys there, and sort of started the S&C program there that still sort of runs to this day. So working with 13s to 16s, like introduced like some gym components to those young kids. Like all their speed, agility work, things like that. And then sort of juggling all that, because I think a big part of being an S&C, especially in Australia, you tend to juggle a number of roles. So a big formative piece for me was actually interning back at Athletes Authority at the time. So I spent 6 years there. And then for those that aren't quite familiar, Athletes Authority, it's a private sector facility. So, I ended up building up a list of sort of 40 athletes spread across AFL, rugby league, football. So started as an intern, worked my way up sort of for 6 years there, whilst juggling the football role. And then I also leaving football, moved across to netball actually, through one of my bosses at Athletes Authority. Lockie Wilmot sort of brought me in as his assistant per se to work with the New South Wales Swifts. So they did that for 2 years, and then transitioned away from Athletes Authority, and then yeah, the Wolves role landed on my lap just about.
So with that, we'll get into the actual move in a minute because obviously that's then a key factor of where you are at the minute. But I want to dive into your experiences at Athletes Authority, but also with all these different sports as well and these different athletes. Because I find it fascinating speaking to different coaches on what they've learned from the approaches that different sports take and maybe coaches within that sport. So is there anything that sort of jumps out that maybe you apply to what you do currently in your current role?
Yeah, I think a very general overarching sort of theme is like between sports, I think there are way more similarities than there are differences in terms of like the physical qualities that each one of those athletes possess. I think the big differences are more the cultural side of things in terms of how much buy-in there is to the gym, or how much buy-in there is to physical development per se. So, I'll think back home, you get a rugby league athlete, or a combative athlete or something like that, and like straight away they're going to be buying into, the heavy lifting, the physical work, because they know that there's such a large component of them like getting through their sport safely by being way more physically prepared versus certainly coming over here. It's been a big eye-opening piece for me in terms of slowly building some more buy into these lads who they know gym is important, but they may not be as heavily as invested in it as what your front row rugby league player might be back in Australia.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? And I know you've mentioned a few sports already that will know that the culture is different to football. What about netball? Was there, in terms of the similarities there, especially relating to the gym and the approach to gym, was it similar to football?
Um, Culturally, those girls were unbelievable at the Swifts. Like, I don't think I've entered an environment where they get on so well with one another. They're willing to work so hard and do everything possible to be getting better each and every day. From I suppose like a physical outputs and sort of that big component side of things. Obviously, there is a massive sort of jump, land, decel, accel component to it that like is a lot higher than football. So even some of those things like the metrics that get tracked on the GPS data, like we wouldn't look at total distance or high speed running or anything like that at all because they're not going to get to it. It'd be heavily related on your number of accels, your number of decels, your number of jump land sort of contacts and things like that. And then from I suppose like a gym exposure, like for me, like I'm just really big on like isolating those different physical qualities into our buckets because I know that I can have such a big impact on all of that. So like if it's max strength, I still want my netball athlete, I still want my football midfielder to have a very good base level of max strength and being able to put good amounts of force into the ground. And then I suppose the next layer on top of that, I need to be able to get them to do that quickly and in different directions. So that's when we're still going to expose them to all our different plyometric and loaded jump options and the plethora of things that comes with that. I still need them to be able to accel and decel really, really efficiently. And I suppose even with our like netball girls, like we still would expose them to our upright running, like in say like a pre-season per se, when things are perhaps a little bit more general. But that would be more from the I guess the angle of like we're just getting like a really high level like neural stimulus rather than worrying about, oh, like is this perfectly like sport specific for netball because they're never going to get to it. It's like, well, no, they're not going to get to max velocity, but in a general scheme of things, it's still going to be really valuable for them to know how to get into an upright position, hold it for a couple of seconds, and then sort of decelerate out of it.
No, that's really interesting. Just to flip that though as well, from your time now in football, if you were to step back into netball or maybe some of the other sports that you've worked in as well, is there any key lessons that you've taken from football?
Um, it's probably a little bit too early to say for me, I think. I think I'd probably flip your question the other way and coming from the private sector predominantly over the last few years, I feel like I've probably taken for granted the fact that these athletes are they're paying to come in and spend time with you. They're making the decision to come in and spend this time with you. And I feel like I've probably almost taken that for granted when I now step into this other role of like these lads have really no idea who I am, but how can I build that rapport? How can I get them to trust me in, I guess, like a short amount of time space so that I can get their buy-in, so that I can get them, exposed and essentially doing their best at whatever I'm giving them. Because I think that was a big sort of theme. My big sort of theme is like it's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's like you can have the greatest program written down on a piece of paper, but if it's not executing in a certain way, then we're sort of wasting our time, really.
Yeah, 100%. Let's get into the move now, because you
Yeah.
mentioned before about it sort of falling into your lap, but it's a fair way from Sydney to Birmingham. So let's talk about initially where the opportunity came from, and then also just first impressions, the move and everything for you as a person. Take away the coach, but you as a person, the move across the world, essentially.
Yeah, right. So the role actually popped up off the back of doing Alan Murdoch's mentorship. I would highly recommend any of his work, and I'm happy to, give him a big plug here. So ran through Alan's mentorship, and then he actually did some CPD work at Wolves. And then they sort of asked him, have you got anyone with a similar philosophy or similar, way of training? And then I was the only one that he mentioned. And then Mark in the first team actually just reached out to me on LinkedIn just to see if I was interested in potentially moving. And you said yes straight away. And then it really just went from there. Had a just a casual interview, then two case studies to put together just to sort of prove, what they're looking for, and then yeah, away we go, mate. It was probably 6 weeks later. I'm shifted off over the other side of the world.
Just give a bit of a time perspective. So obviously, we're recording this on whatever it is of May. Like, how long have you been at the club at the minute?
It has been coming up to 11 months now. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So just under a year's worth of experience, and that's obviously where we can maybe do a bit of reflection. It's going to take a bit of a longer period, isn't it? Like the question I've asked you before in terms of reflecting back to other sports. I realise that you've not had so like years in the position.
Yeah.
But what about the actual move then? Because obviously that's not a small decision, is it? That's not moving just down the road and just to another city in Australia or whatever it is. It's a big move, isn't it? So was there any sort of doubts? Was it something you just wanted to jump into and commit to?
Mate, honestly, I think to go back to what I said before, like it's literally why I started like in this sort of world. Like I always dreamt of trying to come over and pursuing something like this. So when I think back to, all the study that you do, all of this, all of that, or the other, like as soon as Mark messaged me, as soon as Alan messaged me saying like Wolves sort of looking at you, like I was an emotional like ball. I was like, yeah, like so there was absolutely no doubt. Like I was shitting myself, but yeah, yeah, no doubt in my mind that it was something that I'm at an age where I'm young enough to still pursue something like that, and at the drop of a hat, nearly move overseas. But I feel like I'm old enough and I've got enough experience now where I can make that move and hold my own in front of 30 under 21 lads in front of me. So, yeah.
Brilliant. And then going into the club, so you talked about having the lads in front of you. What was your approach then going into this new position with the new set of players, with the new set of staff? What was like the initial few sessions like for you? Because I think this is really important for people moving roles, and this
Mate,
time of year when a lot of people are going to do it as well.
it was a roller coaster to say the least. Yeah. So I think the extra challenging bit for me is because of the timing of my move overseas. Um, I didn't end up arriving until it was round one of the Premier League Two season. So I missed the entirety of preseason. I missed, yeah, actually, it's probably round two, actually, even so, even I probably missed a good 8 to 9 weeks of exposure with them. So the challenging bit for me was coming into an environment where everything has sort of been set to a certain, expectation and standard and things like that. So for me, I think it was a case of not not going in guns blazing and being like this needs to change and that needs to change and this isn't good enough or that's that or whatever. It's more a case of you know taking or I very much took my time and just sort of scoped out how everything's sort of running as it was, and then pretty well each week it was just trying to pick like one or two little things that I could have influence over in the program. Whether that be my first influence that was just an easy grab was the activation session that they do before training. I was like, great, easy win I can get a hold of there because I can put together a little bit more structure to that. And then that was just a really easy way to start to have some more conversations with the lads. And then the more conversations I had with the lads, like it's like, okay, we're now walking from activation to the training pitch. It's like, okay, I've got a 5 minute window where I can talk to X player about like anything. It was just like just trying to build some kind of rapport and then just slowly trying to build the layers on top of that. And then I'm probably going to jump around here, but then it was just kind of like, okay, what's my next, infiltration? Okay, I can start to put together some more structure for their gym sessions. All right, we're going to lay out their gym sessions in a way where we'll start off with like velocity block. We'll do all our plyos, our loaded jumps, anything with a velocity component to it. Then we'll shift into their max strength work, and then we'll shift into their sort of robustness resilience work. And that wasn't changing their program. That was just simply filtering in some really simple components that I've worked off before. And then from there, it was kind of like, okay, we've got that bit of a background of structure in place. Now I can start to actually shift some of their programming a little bit more to what I would be sort of, used to programming off my sort of philosophy. And then, the lads would sort of look back, 3 months later, we've now got access to Team Builder. So that was like a massive thing that has helped with buy-in with the lads for sure. And you look back on their program 3 months later, and it's like, well, like it's changed considerably, but it's been like a very slow shift. And then probably the last component of that I can think of without chewing your ear off here would have been like any of our exposure that I had with the lads before they go over to the skills coaches. So I was like, okay, Jess, our sports scientist, has done an unreal job sort of getting into that point. And then it was sort of like, okay, we can start to theme our days a little bit more. So on pitch, so if it's more max velocity or acceleration or change of direction orientated, I just looked at the big rocks that I felt the lads needed to get a lot better at from those components. And then it's just slowly shifting those or slowly layering in some of those drilling components to start to sift the needle from a movement perspective. Big time there.
I love that. That's such great detail for people because, like I say, I think from now it's going to be a really key period and people are going to end up in a similar position going into a new role. When you've mentioned about going into that position now, I imagine that's probably one of the hardest times to step into a new role because they've had a pre-season period, haven't they? They've had everything sort of set out, intention set. This is the staff. These are the players. Everyone's ready to go. Maybe play a game or a couple of games. Then you come into it. So it's really, really interesting hearing your thought process on what you wanted to include at a certain time. How much of your decision at that point was led by building the connections and the relationships with the players and sort of getting them on board, creating buy-in, and how much was led on your philosophy, maybe spotting those points where you can say, right, I know that if we do this, this will make a big impact because it's things that I've done before and it's in line with what my philosophy and what I do. I know there's going to be a combination there, but how much of that was sort of lent from one side to the other?
Um, I'll probably answer it in two ways. I think I'll go in the gym first, and I'll say that, and I still feel like it's a never-ending process with this, but I think what I've found is a lot of the lads here, they really value like that individual attention. And I think some of them sort of realized that, I did come from that more, I suppose, private sector background. So I think a really good way for me to start to get some buy-in with that was, but for me, I'm always that idea of like I want that sort of 70-80% of my big rocks to be the same amongst the group, because to go back to those physical qualities we were talking about before, like I want my lads to be, strong in a max strength perspective, but that last sort of 20-30%, I should have enough room for perhaps a little bit more individualization. And for me, that probably didn't come from, say, like a testing perspective all the time, but a lot of the time it came from conversations that I was having with the lads, like whether it would literally be like, like someone's got quite poor, deceleration. It's like, okay, well, like we can do some work in the gym to help with that. Or like I'll have another chat, like, okay, how do you feel on your change in direction? Like, how do you feel on your acceleration? It's like we can start to layer in some work to help with all of those different components. So that we sort of like one layer of, I suppose, that individualization piece that the lads can see. It's like, okay, I'm doing predominantly the same program, but I've got this little bit of like love, this little bit of like extra, like sauce on the side that Brendo has like just given to me. Okay, I'm gonna really crack on with that. And then on top of that, I suppose another layer would be more that like injury present prevention side of things. So that's like a really easy, like low hanging fruit. Like if I can look at their testing data and see, okay, like groin squeeze, AB, abduction scores are low, like bang, straight away. I can just grab that and influence it straight away without, that's not a big shift or a big massive overhaul of a change in program to start to influence. So that was sort of like the gym side of things. On pitch was probably a little bit different. I think I think for me, I really wanted to establish this season, especially, is a really good awareness of like nailed two components of our max velocity and our acceleration. So I put them all in the one sort of group because they they really only needed to learn some of those basic traits of those positions. So for me, I'm always one to start with max velocity as I suppose the priority there, because if someone can accelerate quite efficiently but they don't know where the end is, then they're not really going to be able to have the feeling or awareness of how they now need to climb out of an acceleration and into an upright position. So my first sort of point of call was like, okay, we literally need to get them used to feeling what an upright posture is like in max velocity. So like, because that posture is going to dictate, are they going to be able to project forward? Are they going to be able to switch their limbs in the air? And then are they going to be able to be nice and reactive off the ground? And then really from there, it was like just building the layers on that. Like, so I won't go into too much detail because I can hear myself talking for a hell of a long time. But like, it was just building those drilling streams to just create more awareness of those positions. Yeah.
No, it's great. It's great information, and just diving into the approach that you're taking with players, but also then what you're going to do going forward as well. And just to jump on that point that you've made around the velocity work, putting the players into a similar bucket initially, is part of that the fact that you want to get across your coaching points, the things that you're looking for, your language maybe that you're using as well with the players. Then when players are developing at different levels, you know that they've had that foundation from you. Is it part of that as well, that they've all had that same sort of foundation laid and then you can build on top of it?
Yeah, 100%. Like, they didn't need particularly high level detailed coaching. They just needed a really solid foundation of the basics. and then really from there, like I was then able to grab a couple of individuals, like, if it would be after the session or arriving early for sessions where it's like maybe we can do a little bit more specific work. But yeah, I just found it just establishes a really consistent like theme of the players understanding me and my cues and what I'm actually looking for to then at the end of the day make them faster out in the field.
I love that because that's really important, isn't it? Because then if you mention switching or whatever what phrase and term you're going to use, that's going to be similar across coaches, but people might have slight differences in what they use. So if you use a certain phrase and then another coach uses something slightly different, players can get a little bit confused, can't they? Whereas doing the approach that you've taken, everyone's having the same sort of exposure to the phrases and the coaching that you do, and then you're able to build on it.
100%. And then I think for me, I'm probably going to go on a tangent here. Like a lot of people talk about speed work and say like they don't have enough time to teach it. It's like, well, like you do. Like like if you've got a 15-minute block at 3 days a week,
Yeah.
I can hedge a bet and say like if you and I'm really big on this, is you need to periodize your language over a 6 to 8, a 9 month period so that your lads or the players in front of you can understand. So if I walked in on day one and I'm talking about a really intricate detail of pelvis position or a foot strike position or something like that, that's going to go straight over their heads. Like day one for me, it was literally, can you be upright? Can you switch your legs in the air? That's all we started doing it on the spot. Okay. Drill number two. Can you do a pogo and be quite reactive and stiff off the ground? Okay. And we spent time on those different components. And then, week two, you layer in some more cues, some more feedback. Week three, you then layer that in on top again. And then all of a sudden it goes back to what I was saying in the gym, so we use S-Mass, Chris Brammer's S-Mass quite a lot. And like very happy to say, like the average improvement for our lads was or a decrease of 5 points. So S-Mass, for those of you that aren't aware, so it's Chris Brammer's biomechanical breakdown of max velocity running. So breaks down upright running into those sort of 5 components of a kilogram. And then you get a score, so a yes or a no, based off if they're hitting certain sort of KPIs throughout that running cycle. So a high score is quite poor. That's sort of linked to like more injury risk, really inefficient running. And then a lower score or a 0 is actually like what you're optimally aiming for. So we had a decrease in score of an average of 5 across the squad. But then we were able to tie that in with an average or increase in top speed by 5% as well. So if you can like layer in all those different components of like how well someone moves over a long period of time, and then start to expose them to those positions at that high velocity again, like good things can then happen. It just takes time and a methodology and patience as well.
I love that. You've basically summarized what I've been trying to get the point across about in terms of your approach with the simple phrase of periodizing your language. I think that just sums it up for me that that's essentially what you're doing, isn't it? You've just said about there explaining certain positions and drills or whatever you're going to be utilizing. If you're using that language in a few weeks, a few months' time, they can just relate back to that. And I think that's so important. And it ties in exactly with the approach you've taken in your position, which I think is really, really interesting. We've
I think
spoken.
the other,
Sorry,
sorry to, I've just thought of something then that's probably more value again. Like if you're leaving all of your coaching to the field or the pitch, there's so much that you're missing out on. So I would do the predominant amount of my coaching like before the session would start. Like if we're doing some plyos in the gym or some switching work in the gym, like I'm going to talk to that lad if they're doing it really, really well. Like that's what I'm looking for out on the field. And then they can start to connect the dots. Oh, okay, I'm not just doing this thing in the gym to get warm or because it looks cool. It's like there's an actual purpose and a reason behind it. And then on top of that, it's the conversations that you have, like walking around the training ground or at lunch. Like there are so many different avenues to get that feedback across to the players. Because at the end of the day, I probably averaged about a 20-minute block before our pitch session would start with the lads, and like that's pretty good time. But like if I then stretch that time that I have with the players to I've got an hour in the gym with them now. I've got half an hour before the session starts. Like, well, there's almost 2 hours where I could be, just conversing with them and having a conversation about all of these different components.
And that snowballs as well, doesn't it? Because that 30 seconds that you might take a player to one side and have a quick chat about, they then might pass that information on to another player, or it simply gives them something to think about maybe when they're in a more of a technical session or out on the pitch, like you say, doing the speed session or whatever it is. So those little points are really important, aren't they? Because they can just snowball over time.
And I think the other side of it, like I think as practitioners, we know a lot of this stuff is important, but like you need to sell it to the player, and like if they do a really like crisp drop jump, or if they do like a really smooth like box switch where they're on a box, they come down, they switch back up, and like if they do that really well, like you need to let them know that, and you need to be buzzing for it because like they'll think of it, oh, I'm just doing it. It's like, well, if they see you're buzzing for it, then they'll be like, oh, okay, like this is obviously important.
No, definitely. And the way you speak about what happens on the pitch, it makes it so much more, it makes it easier, doesn't it, for the player to start realizing why they're doing things, which sounds really obvious, but it's something that does need to be hammered home, doesn't it? And then you can make that individual twist to how you're speaking about something as well, speaking about position, the style of play of that player and things like that. Then there's suddenly like, actually, Brendan realizes that I'm a centre midfielder and I'm a number six who's going to sit a bit deeper. I'm going to do a lot of these movements, and that's why I'm doing X, Y, and Z in the gym. That's why he's programmed it for me. And straight away, you've got a rationale there, haven't you?
Big time, big time.
No, it's brilliant, really good. Um, you've talked there a little bit about the speed-based approach and some of the successes that you've had so far, and it'd be interesting to if you wanted to expand on that in terms of what you see going forward as well. Is there anything else that you feel like you've put into the program, or maybe just highlighted with the work that they were doing before that's progressed on more?
Oh, where could I go? I feel like I've touched on it all, man.
No, that's good. That's good because
Yeah, yeah,
we have spoke about a lot of it already. The twist to that, I suppose, is
yeah.
there anything that you've taken or that you wanted to put in? And I think this is interesting coming from your background across different sports as well, where you're like, this will work with this group. You've maybe tried it and either you've had to amend it or take it out.
Hmm. I think I think for me, I was I'll probably answer your question in a little bit different way, and it'll link back to what I was sort of saying before. Um, I think I'm whenever I meet a new athlete, like whether it's working privately or I'm meeting a whole squad for the first time, I think it's really important that you've got to meet them where they're at. So as much as I value max strength and as much as I value whatever it is, like if a player or an athlete on the other end like doesn't value it quite as much as what I do, the absolute worst thing that I can do is go and give this athlete 3 days a week of 5 sets of five on a squat bench dead and and that could be the absolute best thing for like in some capacity for some athletes out there. But like if they're not going to buy into it, and if they're not going to, like believe in what you have to say, or believe that you've got their best interests at heart, like they're not going to do the program. They're going to be skipping sets. They're going to be like skipping the gym. They're going to be doing all sorts of different stuff to try and work their way around it. So I think, like, to try and answer the question in a very roundabout way, like I think working out like the athlete's background of, not only what they had been doing that season, but like I think, like you could also try and delve into like an athlete's background from say 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they could have had a really awful experience with a previous, S&C when they were 13 or 14 years old. And now they've just got a really bad relationship with anyone that tries to, force their way on them, or get them to lift weights or do this or do that. And that will then stem into, into their late teens, early 20s and things like that. So if you've almost got that like little bit of a filter in the back of your head of like, they've all got very, very different backgrounds. They've all been exposed to different training ages, to different coaches, to different upbringings, culturally, as well as in their football world. I think that just helps you, or it's helped me kind of like stay on a little bit more of like a level-headed playing field of like not trying to force myself upon them and change too much of here or there or the other all at once.
It's a really good point because you mentioned.
Hopefully that answers your question. I feel like I'm going left and right on you.
No, no, it's a really good point because of the fact of what you mentioned before. If you've got 30 players in front of you, that's not 30 players that are the same player, of the same experiences. Because yes, they're at the club at the minute, but they've probably had a lot of different, been at different academies, maybe not been in academies before and signed up at a later age or whatever it's going to be. They're going to have a lot of different experiences, aren't they? Good, bad, or indifferent. So I think it's a great point that you've mentioned numerous times about the conversations and the sort of the points that you can get those short communicate, like you can get a bit of communication with a player at a certain point there. That's the key with that, isn't it? Trying to get around those 20, 30 players and having those little points of having an impact with them.
Yeah, big time, big time. Like it's only a like a 1 or 2%, but if I can have five of those conversations in a week, like you capture the whole squad within a month, and then you just repeat that over and over. And even if that means like because I'll still work almost similarly to what I did in the private sector, like where I've got my, my athlete list or their priorities, their key targets, things like that. But like I'll also keep tabs on like when I've last had like a touch point or a more not like a 20-minute meeting at all, but like at least a little tab on like, okay, I've caught up with this lad walking from the gym to lunch or whatever it is. And then I can kind of keep a little bit of a track of that and make sure that I at least get a touch point every sort of like 8 to 10 weeks. That's more like, yeah, an in-depth conversation.
I think it's a great point because then you keep the consistency, don't you? And in a short amount of time, a lot of things can change as well, can't they? Because if you've got a squad of players there, you've got a lot of players that aren't playing, a lot of players that aren't being picked. You've got players that are flying, players that are maybe not playing so well, players that are injured, players that are maybe coming back from injury. So it's so important, isn't it, to just stay consistent with them and just continually check in.
100%.
Awesome, mate. The other thing I wanted to ask was, so in your role with the squad that you're with at the minute, how much focus have you put, I suppose, to first team and then also down to the academy age groups as well? Because you're going to have players feeding into you from the lower age groups, but then obviously there's going to be players going into first team as well, especially looking into next season. So how much have you sort of synced in your work either way?
Yeah, it's been a very enjoyable like puzzle piece to try and navigate all those different components. So in terms of like first team exposure, like Mark's got quite a similar philosophy to what I do. So the process is we're actually trying to filter a lot of that sort of work down, 21s, 18s, and beyond. Um, and I'll give Fraser a shout out here. So Fraser has also sort of worked with Alan before. He's working with the under 18s at the moment. And then we've got Matt Coe. He sort of works in sort of that sort of 15, 16 age group. And I think we've been able to come together quite nicely just to try and like connect the dots in terms of like what are the key things that we're seeing? Can we marry up our philosophies together, so that if I get some of the under 18 lads in for next season, which is happening, it's already there and thereabouts. Can I be confident that they can step into the gym and they can squat, they can hinge. I'm confident they can do bench press and all those just foundational movement patterns. Out on the field, do I know that they can do a dribble bleed? Do I know that they can do a scissor bleed? And just making sure that a lot of those big rocks are being met, so that as the lads transition between the age groups, it's very seamless. Because one thing that especially 21's football, it's absolute chaos at the best of times. We'll get at the drop of a hat, four lads, you're up with the first team now, or and then that means that four of the 18s have to come up with us. And it has been really good to hear that, like, say, like if three or four of our lads do go up, like they're able to hold their own when it comes to like a lot of their drilling and a lot of their speed work at the start of those sessions that they were doing with the first team. So that, like, I mean, that was good feedback for us. And then similar to Fraser and his boys stepping up with us in the 21s, like there was never really moments where like, okay, I've got 25 in front of me, and then okay, like these four lads, like they're just not there. They're so far off it, I can't even give it to them. Like they've been able to sort of really seamlessly transition, when they've had to sort of shift up and down groups.
No, it's really important, isn't it, in terms of tying in with the staff and the programming either way. Just you've talked there and spoke about some of the maybe the requirements you want from the 18s and maybe some of the younger players. Was there anything fed back from Mark initially? Obviously, he's going to be, I'm sure, part of you coming into the club and understanding your philosophy. But was there anything specific from him, but then also from the coaching staff, the sort of style of play from first team? Is there anything that jumps out where you're like, my players have got to do X, Y, and Z, but they've also got to be ready for a style of play or whatever it's going to be at first team level?
Um, to be honest, I think because Mark and a lot of the staff that brought me in, they sort of understood the background that I was coming from. So, and I think I'm in a very blessed position to sort of say like they trusted me to essentially like lead the program how I see fit, really. So I've never at all really felt like, oh, I'm doing this because it's from the top down. It's just it's been quite a nice way to just have a direct influence on things straight away. In terms of, I suppose, like the the direct relationship between like the playing style and things like that, I think because we have gone through a bit of a transition period at Wolves with the first team manager changing, there probably hasn't been a big priority on trying to get systems sort of filtered down through the academy just yet. But I think there's already like little things happening that are like very early on that sound like will sort of build a lot of that sort of stuff into next year and beyond.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Awesome. No, I know Mark would have done a very shrewd job in the hiring process. So I know he'd have understood exactly what you were bringing to the role. Anyone that's not checked out Mark Reed's episodes, I recommend to go and listen to him, because I think he's done 2 episodes now and they've gone down really, really well. So I can maybe link them in the show notes as well. That was before he moved to Wolves. I think he was at Malmo at the time for those. The other thing I wanted to ask, Brendan, was we spoke before about when you started at the club after the pre-season period, after maybe a couple of games. What's your thoughts? I know you've got a nice break back in Australia for a little bit, but when you come back heading into pre-season, what's your sort of thoughts heading into next season for the program and for yourself in your role?
Oh, mate. For the program in general, I'm very keen to just sink a teeth into like a full preseason. Because I think that's probably one thing that I didn't get a big exposure of this season was like seeing how far we can really push the needle from like a conditioning and like an energy systems development perspective. So I'm very keen to sort of drop my teeth into that, like whether it be some MAS sort of prescription or like I've got quite a lot of like repeat speed work that I'll be very keen to drop in towards the back end of pre-season. Um, uh, what was the rest of your question? Sorry.
Yeah, basically that. So that's on the programming side, but just your
Yeah.
role, your position. Like, do you see anything that's going to
Oh,
differ?
yes. Yeah. I think I think for my role in particular, I can like from a personal perspective, I can see I'm at a little bit of a crossroads in my career, and I know I've got some decisions to sort of make. So I can see that um, there probably is an angle towards that more like head of physical performance, say for the academy, that's sort of being that one to connect the dots between your juniors to your 14s, 15s to your 21s, who's not necessarily attached to a team, but is kind of overseeing, more staff in those roles to then deliver a program that, we're essentially putting together as a group. Or I can see myself going down that route of, highly specialized, especially from that speed side of things, and being very like have like a very very niche area in just that one component, and that will probably steer towards more like working directly in the first team. That's probably the crossroads I feel like I'm at, and decisions will need to be made very soon. But like yeah, very very exciting time of the career, that's for sure.
No, I appreciate the sort of transparency on that because I think a lot of people will relate to that career-wise as well. So, mate, this has been really, really good. I think you've gave a really good insight into obviously going into a new position, your initial sort of thought processes in stepping in with a new team, but also how you see things progressing as well. I think it's been fascinating to dive into that. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Mate, awesome to be on.
Brendan, will you just give people, if people want to reach out, they want to ask questions, like where would you direct people?
Yeah, just Instagram. I'll fairly regular on there. Just Brendan Hoyer, so Brendan Hoyer underscore on the end will come straight up.
Brilliant, mate. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the trip back home for the 3 weeks that you're back over there. And then best of luck for next season.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me on, mate.